tonight we're going to pick up with the 5A classification as well as the 6A classification. So let's get to it. I want to start with 5A in Region 8. Region 8 comprises most of the Utah County schools that are 5A. The school I want to start with is Springville. So Springville, they need to replace their quarterback as well as their wide receivers. And if they do this, they'll be in great shape. They've got a great defensive football team. They've got a young man by the name of Jaden Church. He's going to either play quarterback or receiver for them, just depending on where they need him. And he has to play well in order for their offense to really pick up. They've also got a wide receiver by the name of Trey Hillstead, who had 15 catches last year. I expect him to have a bigger role for Springville as they move forward in Region 8. Next team out of Region 8 I want to talk about is Skyridge. Skyridge is solid on both sides of the ball. They need to be more disciplined. And what I mean by that is get rid of the penalties. So there were a couple of games of theirs I went to last year, and they had a lot of issues with personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct penalties and just silly penalties overall that really cost them some valuable yardage, as well as really made it hard to win some of the games that they won last year. But the great thing about them is they're so talented that they can kind of make up for some of those mistakes. If they really want to accomplish the goals that they have this year, which according to everyone in their program is to win a state championship, they really need to get rid of those penalties and those mistakes that give their opponents free yards and first downs. They've got some really talented young men that play for their team. One that I want to highlight is offensive lineman Logan Sagapolu. He's possibly the best offensive lineman in the state of Utah. Has offers from BYU, University of Utah, Washington, and Oregon. So look for him to have a great year and really lead their offensive football team as they go forward in 2018. I also wanted to talk about their quarterback, Jaden Clemens. Threw for 2,137 yards last year with 31 touchdowns. Great player. I look for him to have an all-state caliber performance this year for Skyridge. And if he does that, if he plays that well, they really do have a shot at that state championship. And I do believe they have a great shot to win their region as well. Next team I want to talk about is Maple Mountain. Maple Mountain, they took their lumps last year. They were 0-10. Really got beat up. I had the opportunity to go to one of their games. They didn't win the game, but I don't believe it was necessarily because of talent. I think they just had some really difficult circumstances with some injuries, and they were quite young and inexperienced last year. So what that looks like this year, they've got 12 returning starters, which should help with improving and getting better, and then possibly even competing for a playoff spot. They've got their quarterback, his name is Cam Dorney. He's a great leader for their football team, and he'll help them to be better as well. Running back Spencer Curtis is back from injury. He's one of those injuries I was talking about that really hurt their offensive football team. And he's really going to have to shoulder the load offensively. He's really going to help them score more points and be more efficient on the offensive side of the ball. Next up is Provo. Provo right now has some questions at quarterback that they need to fix and they need to resolve, obviously sooner rather than later, seeing how they play in a couple days. They need to improve offensively, and obviously by getting better quarterback play and having someone that takes the reins there will help with that. They're a young football team, and they don't have as much depth as you would like to see out of a possible reaching contender. But they do have young players that are really talented and that I believe will have an impact on their season this year. One of those is running back by the name of Drayson Havia. He ran for 394 yards last year with 5 touchdowns. I look for him to get more carries this year and really have a better year statistically, and I really believe he's going to help lead them offensively. Another young offensive player there is Ben Miles Mills. He's going to get more opportunity as he is a very talented young wide receiver. He's got a big frame, good body, and I look forward to him having a great year as well and helping Provo get better offensively. Wasatch lost a lot of talent off their team last year that made it to the playoffs. They've got some O-line questions that I would like to see solved and answered. They need to run the ball better. They struggled all year last year running the football. One of the keys that I really look at when watching a team at the high school level is you don't have to run all the time, but you really have to have a solid run game that can help you get in those second and third down and short situations. The thing that is a bright spot for Wasatch, they've got a great quarterback, Brock Cloward. He's a returning starter. He threw for 2,152 yards last year with 20 touchdowns. I expect him to improve on that number and be more effective as well, so fewer turnovers and whatnot. If he can do that, that's when Wasatch will really start competing for a playoff spot this year. Their defense is going to be anchored by their safety, Bridger Purdy. He had 61 tackles last year, and he's their defensive captain for this year. Timpanogos is in the middle of rebuilding their program. They have some depth issues. They're going to be very young this year. I really don't expect a lot from them because of that, but there are a couple players that I really like that are on their squad, and so you never know. If they outplay their expectations, maybe I'll have to eat my words a little bit. But they've got their quarterback, Gabe Sweeten, had over 2,800 total yards last year and 29 touchdowns. They've got running back Rory Zigra, 680 yards with 4 touchdowns. Another kid that I think will take his game to the next level and really help Timpanogos on the offensive side of football. Players to watch in Region 8. Jaden Church, wide receiver / quarterback from Springville. Logan Sagapalu, offensive lineman from Skyridge. Jaden Clemens, quarterback from Skyridge. Brock Cloward, quarterback from Wasatch. And Gabe Sweeten, quarterback from Timpanogos. My picks on who's going to win Region 8. I have Skyridge picked to win this region, followed by Springville, Provo, Wasatch, Maple Mountain, and Timpanogos. My dark horse for Region 8 is Wasatch. Mainly, I love that Cloward kid. I think he's a great quarterback for the high school level. And if their young skills position guys that surround him can perform and contribute at a high level, Wasatch is going to win some games this year that they aren't supposed to, and they can compete for the Region 8 title. Region 7. So this is the teams from the East Bench of Salt Lake City plus Timpview is how I view the region. The reason why I kind of give these geographic explanations of where these teams are for the most part is just kind of help you where we're at, bouncing throughout the state of Utah. When we look at Region 7, I want to start with Timpview. Timpview, in my eyes, is the cream of the crop in this region, mainly because they've got 3 extremely talented offensive linemen in Caden Yarrow, Nick Child, and Luke Child. All 3 of those young men will play college football at some level next year, but look for them to just maul people and really help Timpview be a great offensive football team. They do have a new head coach, Andy Stokes. He came up from Dixie. Look for him to implement some of the things that made him successful at Dixie, really running the ball, getting big plays on the offensive side of the ball via the run. And I think those linemen, again, will help with that. They've got some quarterback questions that they need to resolve, but the rest of their team is extremely talented, and I expect great things from Timpview this year. Next up, out of Region 7, I want to talk about Alta. Alta is very deep and talented. They're going to have a new quarterback, Indy Hansen, who played wide receiver last year. It'll be interesting to see how he moves into that quarterback role, and see if he can really help their offense keep the pace that they had last year, because they were one of the best offenses in the state, let alone 5A. Alta must get better defensively. They're going to have some help with that. They had some young players last year that are going to be much better this year. One of those that I am excited to look at is Brendan Folau. I believe he's one of the better defensive players in the state, especially in the 5A classification. The big point is their defense needs to improve on how many points they're giving up. They gave up just under 30 last year. They need to get better at that. I would like to see them give up about 4 or 5 points less. If they're able to do that, then that's really when they're going to start contending in this region for a title. Corner Canyon. Corner Canyon will need to replace the quarterback from last year. That's Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson committed to play at BYU. Corner Canyon, they also have a solid defense. That will help them as well this year. Some of the players I want to call out, wide receiver Noah Cart, 850 yards receiving last year with 5 touchdowns. Really talented young man. Linebacker Caden Johnson had 95 tackles and 2 interceptions. He'll really help that defense be solid and help Corner Canyon be a playoff team this year. Jordan's next on my list. Jordan's a team that must improve their scoring defense. They gave up just under 31 points last year. What I think they're going to focus on there is they're going to focus on getting more plays from their best players on the defensive side of the ball. They do have some talent that they have in their program, and I really think they're going to do everything that they can to get those players in the best position possible. They must acclimate their new offensive talent. They're a fairly young team offensively in order to stay at last year's offensive pace. Again, they kind of with Altas, they were one of the better offensive teams in 5A, scoring just over 39 points a game. Some of the players that I really liked for Jordan, Ethan Bolingbrook, wide receiver, had over 1,000 yards receiving last year, 8 touchdowns. Running back Jacob Shaver, 840 yards with 16 touchdowns, had a great year last year. And I really look for those 2 young men to carry the load offensively for Jordan and really help them make the playoffs again this year. Brighton is going to be breaking in a new quarterback by the name of Alex Clifford. They also have a new head coach and 0 returning starters due to the number of kids they've had actually transfer out of their program. Basically, they had a coach resign this spring, and they lost a lot of the kids that had started games last year when that happened. So they'll be unrecognizable, I think, for the most part if you watched any of their games last year. But just look for them. They're very young, very inexperienced, so just look for them to deal with some of the growing pains of that. The last team in Region 7 that we want to discuss is Cottonwood. Cottonwood wasn't very good defensively last year, giving up almost 53 points per game. That was the largest in the state, and it wasn't even close. So I'm really looking for them to improve on the defensive side of the ball. They'll also need some improved offensive line play to help their offense out. Part of that goes to discipline, just making sure that they're not making mistakes, making sure they're picking up their coverages and making the right blocks. That's what they need to do to avoid having another 0-10 year like last year. Another issue, they need to make sure they're scoring more. Main point there is they need to look for explosiveness and get it in the game. What I mean there is find kids in your program that are your best athletes and just get them the ball. Get them the ball, see what they can do with it, and that's what I would charge them to do. One player I wanted to call out for them is Sammy Duran. He's an experienced leader on that defense, and so hopefully he can really point them in the right direction and really help them get better off that almost 53 points a game last year. Players to watch in Region 7. I've got the 3 Timpview O-line members that I mentioned, Kanan Yarrow and Luke Child and Nick Child. So those 3. I think they're really talented, and it's just fun to watch, especially if you enjoy offensive line play. Brandon Folau and Eric Folau, linebackers from Alta. Noah Carr, wide receiver, Corner Canyon. Ethan Bolingbroke, wide receiver from Jordan. And Jacob Shaver, running back from Jordan. My picks to win Region 7, it's going to be Timpview, followed by Corner Canyon, Alta, Jordan, Brighton, and Cottonwood. My dark horse is Jordan. Jordan can be really explosive on offense with Bolingbroke and Shaver. If they can get some help from their defense and get better quarterback play, watch out for the Beat Diggers. They're going to be much improved in 2018, and they can compete for that Region 7 title. Next up is Region 6. More teams from the Salt Lake City area. First on my list is West. West is going to have a new quarterback in 2018. Look for their young defense to improve this year, and for their offense to go as that new quarterback goes. If that new quarterback can be efficient, can help them score some points early, really look for their confidence to be up as the year progresses, and that bodes well for their 2018 season. Some of the players for West that I wanted to call out: running back Faisal Aiden had 190 yards rushing last year, 3 touchdowns. His big thing is he needs to stay healthy. He's been fighting an ankle issue the last couple of years, so I really want to look for him to be healthy and have a great year. Defensive back Trayson Johnson, 23 tackles, 1 interception. Bring him up mainly because they're very young on the defensive side of the ball, and so he's going to, having that experience from last year, he's going to help them be better and help them progress. Skyline is young and inexperienced. They're also going to have a new quarterback this year. You'll see that's a theme here in Region 6. And their offense will go as he does. Again, same concept as kid from West. They must improve their scoring defense through focusing on the basics, just being in the right position, doing the right things at the right times, and just really being more efficient from a defensive standpoint. The last thing with Skyline that I wanted to call out is they need to throw the ball to Hayden Hansen. Young, talented receiver, 556 yards last year with 3 touchdowns. If they can get him the ball more this year, look for them to have a better year from the offense. Olympus has 6 returning starters that will help the defense improve. They must focus on getting the ball to those the 2 talented offensive players that they have. Wide receiver Noah Benny, 512 yards, 5 touchdowns. Running back Jack Holberg, 359 yards with 5 touchdowns. They need to get those 2 young men the ball. If they're able to do that, they're going to have a better offensive year. But the big thing with Olympus is they need to get better on the defensive side of the ball. Lehigh's going to be breaking in a new quarterback this year, replacing Cameron Cooper, who signed with Washington State. In fact, actually, one of the possible replacements is his younger brother. Inexperienced team that will lean on a few returning players on offense to have a good year. One to watch is running back Carson Manukin. He had 1,192 yards last year, had a great year, and look for him to be the catalyst of their offense this year. Highland's very experienced. Their talent must show up on the biggest stage. So at times, especially last year in the playoffs, they really struggled on both sides of the ball in their playoff matchup. So I look for them to be better there and to have that focus that's necessary to perform on the biggest stage. A couple of players that I wanted to call out there, running back Bronson Olivao. He'll get much more of the workload this year, so look for him to have a better year. Fullback Colton White, 507 yards and 7 touchdowns. He's fullback, and just look for him to get a bunch more carries this year. Murray must stay healthy. They're going to be focusing on being more consistent on both sides of the ball. They have a strong offensive line that will lead the way for running back Logan Jones. Look for him to carry the load offensively. Players to watch in Region 6. Hayden Hansen, wide receiver Skyline. Noah Benny, wide receiver Olympus. Jack Holberg, running back Olympus. Carson Manukin, running back Lehigh. Colton White, fullback from Highland. My picks to win Region 6. I'm picking Lehigh to win this region, followed by Highland, Olympus, Skyline, West, and Murray. My dark horse in Region 6 is Olympus. Olympus has a nice two-headed monster on offense in Benny and Holberg that it could be rough for them to be stopped by opposing defenses, making them a possible contender in Region 6. All right, Region 5. Region 5 are a lot of the teams that are up north. Some teams, Cache Valley and Davis County in the 5A ranks. Let's get started with Box Elder. Box Elder, they're going to be strong on the offensive and defensive line. They've got 12 returning stars that will really help them make the playoffs. A couple players that I want to call out are wide receiver Connor Stevenson, had 715 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. Linebacker Bernard Pena, 70 tackles and 2 sacks. Box Elder could be very good if they get better years from their skills position players that are fairly young and inexperienced, but if they get better years from them, they'll be better. Bountiful. Bountiful is going to have a new head coach this year, and the rebuild has begun for Bountiful. They need to find big plays on offense to improve upon the 17 points per game they had last year. Part of what could help is they've got a young quarterback by the name of Brig Willard. If he improves and gets better from his performance last year, I can see them pushing for a playoff spot and being in the top 4. All right, Woods Cross. One player I want to call out is Karsten Negley, 1,566 yards passing and 8 touchdowns. If they can see improvement from him and have him be more efficient and not make as many mistakes with the football, they'll have a better year offensively, and they can push again into those top 3 or 4 spots and make the playoffs. All right, next team on my list is Viewmont. Viewmont is very strong defensively. Health is a key for them in 2018. If they stay healthy, especially on the offensive side of the ball, they're going to have a good year, and expect them to be in the playoffs. A couple of kids I want to call out: linebacker Jackson Coyle, 92 tackles and 1 sack last year. Defensive back Noah Montoya, 57 tackles and an interception. Roy is returning 14 starters. They must improve offensively, especially on the turnover front. Offensive scoring is a must, and it will come down to these two. Quarterback Jackson Dart had almost 1,400 yards passing last year with 10 touchdowns. And wide receiver Kyrese Rowan had 374 yards and a touchdown. Last team I want to talk about in Region 6 is Farmington. Farmington is a new high school. They're going to be playing their inaugural season this year. One thing I've noticed, especially having watched Salem Hills High School when they first came into existence, is those new schools typically struggle with depth. They don't have a lot of seniors on their team because obviously those seniors stayed at the schools that they were at before for the most part. And they also struggle because obviously new coach, new program, and they're just building into a consistent program. All right, players to watch. Jackson Dart, quarterback Roy. Jackson Coyle, linebacker Viewmont. Karsten Negley, quarterback Woods Cross. And Connor Stevenson, wide receiver Box Elder. My picks in Region 5. I'm picking Roy to win the region, followed by Viewmont, Box Elder, Woods Cross, Bountiful, and Farmington. My dark horse in this region is Box Elder. Box Elder can put themselves in a great spot if their talented linemen dominate games and they get improvement from their defense. If that happens, Box Elder for sure has a chance to compete for this region. Alright, if you like the videos, if you like what you're seeing, please subscribe. Turn on your notification bell. You'll get all the videos I do from here on out. Have a good night.